there is an underlying thing. It was building up for the last couple of years that they were really capitalizing big time on international students. Like I went into their financials and I looked online here, and $121 million of their revenue in 2020 and 21 was
internet. Canadore, 100.
Yes,
Canadore. That's Canadore. The kind of money they were. Come on.
Yes, and only $13 million in domestic students.
Stop it.
No, really, it's lopsided. Right?
That's massive difference.
Yeah, and at that time it was half Chinese, half India. Very, very concentrated.
Yeah, he did, from my understanding, like a number of years ago, because I had talked to him. I remember him going to China quite often to build the aviation program. There was a lot of Chinese students that were coming, international students from China. So he was creating that pipeline, and building the relationships with China. So really interesting.
So everybody knows it's like a big part of the budget up there, a big part of the revenue, and Canadore is getting as much as they possibly can, right? Why wouldn't you? Although it grows into a situation, and when that pimple is kind of popped, like last September, whether it's their fault or not, it looked like they were taking advantage of the international students.
It felt like that, right?
Yeah.
There was actually, as the way the story was told, it felt like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I feel like that now, right? So, yes, but here's the other thing. I believe, because I've sat on a board of governors for a university and a college, the way the system is designed is provincial and federal governments are not funding universities and colleges based on students and programming and that. It's based on numbers and revenue. And so you can get another building built if you have more students and more revenue. What's interesting, so they're not providing funding for students and things like that. They're providing it for buildings. But what was interesting at the time when I was sitting on a board, it was like, well, those numbers are shrinking in Ontario. They didn't have the international pipeline of students. So they're shrinking. So the model isn't working. So you're going to give us money for a new building. We can't actually fill the building we're in right now. Like, really interesting. I'm going, this is broken. So then, they were smart enough to figure out, it's like, wait a second, we have this pipeline of potential students that would like to come from a distance, international students, and it's going to help us with that pipeline, going to help us with student numbers, help us with revenue as well, because they're going to come in and they're going to be paying a whole lot more than the students here in the province. And it's like, okay, this is like a bit of a win-win. What's really, I find fascinating now is now, like, this has happened. It's completely integrated. We have an intern student that we pay and is doing a great job for us here. And if you go out into the city now, so many jobs are filled by these international students. So by cutting this thing in half now, I think there are many retailers and different service groups and businesses in the area are going to feel, again, the people on Main Street are going to feel the pinch. Mm-hmm. That's who's going to really feel the pinch. And actually, George Burton posted about that on LinkedIn. He had a whole thing where he posted, he says, you know what, if the government doesn't, federal government doesn't come around with this, because I think Vic Fideli's, stood up and said, look, the feds have gone too far with what they're doing on a cap. It's going to affect the revenue and the growth of these different institutions.
Canadore is in a position where it's going to be impacted greatly, and the posts from George Burton on LinkedIn show how nervous he is, both for being able to operate but fulfill what he feels is the college's mandate to prepare workers for the economy.
Right.
As well as being a very big driver of the North Bay community economy.